That's fine. All right. Hey, everyone, we'll take this again. How's it going? It's Disorganized Play. I'm Eric Reichert. I am not Tom Lommel. He's somewhere on his way. We expect him any moment. Pretty soon, he's going to walk in and he's going to say his things. He's going to call himself a bastard and all that stuff. But until then, we're here with just me. He invited me. Wraith says, hey, how's it going? Everyone in the chat, hey, Wraith. Yeah, we're here to talk about the Dungeons and the Dragons and the games. Here comes...
Hello, players, it's me, your favorite dungeon guy. Tom's not here. We can look at the camera to see when he gets here, but he's not here yet. He says he's on his way. He says 3 o'clock. I'll be there. It is 3:01 right now.
3:02.
3:02. Well, that clock is wrong.
Yeah, I set that clock.
So yeah. Anyway, we're going to start talking. You can see the topics on this side of the screen here. Prepare your questions because Tom will be covering questions and Eric as well. We are going to be covering both Iron Keep and Lords of Greyhaven tonight, today. So prepare your questions for both of those shows, and we'll get to them probably later on.
Yeah.
I imagine, unless Tom is super late, and then we just have to go, okay.
Just vamp.
Whatever. Yeah, Tom's beard and then I transported it to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, what are you guys up to?
I got out of work early for this.
Yeah. This is what we do.
I mean, there was nothing at work. I will say though, I bought a new water cooler for my PC, and then I brought it into work to work on it, and I got there all excited to work on it because there's nothing going on today. Didn't have the bracket, so I took it apart and was like, what? I can't do anything about this. And that's the second time I've brought my PC into work to add parts and then couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Talk about disorganized play.
Yeah.
How are you liking doing an actual miniseries, Eric?
I mean, so far, it's not really a mini-series. Technically, so far, it's a one-shot. We've only done the one.
It's true.
So it's pretty standard stuff. It's interesting, though, the idea of knowing that there's more to it, like having an idea of what the future is going to be. Not a super clear vision of it. I tried not to do that. I was looking up because I was very nervous because I've never written an adventure that's more than a one-shot. And so I was like, I don't know what to do, and I just Googled how do I write adventure campaign, and one of the things I saw said that you really don't think of it like writing the whole thing. Just write the first session's the intro session, so just write the intro, and then do the second session, which is building towards something, and worry about that later. So I kind of focused on that, and I was like, how are we going to introduce these characters to the world and all that stuff. With varying success, but that I tried not to focus too much on what the future would be for the different sessions, because that's always in flux in a game like Dungeons and Dragons with players like the ones I picked for my cast, because you never know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And in the few games that I have run, it's a very vague outline, and then you drill into it with the players as it goes. But yeah. Hey, Farquad, good to see you as usual, and everyone else in chat. Thanks for joining us. So, do you want to give a recap of last night's episode of Iron Keep?
Yeah. So last night started with us picking up where we left off the week before, where we were interrogating a guy at the Bard College, and he turned out to be a demon. And then I thought we were gonna, like happen so many times, he's like, he turned into a demon, and then Tom was like, and that's where we'll end it. I was like, okay, we're gonna start the next session immediately in combat. But we didn't. We actually talked with him for an hour before any combat started. And then unexpectedly, the demon guy didn't just go, okay, demon powers, ha, ha, ha. He was like, okay, top of the initiative, Misty Step, run away.
I'm outie.
So we just had to chase him. So it just became this really fun, like Hong Kong action, like chase sequence where we were doing ridiculous stuff that you can't really do in D&D, but we decided it was okay for this particular session. Which was a lot of fun. And yeah, we just like chased a dude, tried to hit him as best we can. I had no armor or weapons or anything, which that I've done. That's the second time we've jumped into combat, and it's always kind of interesting because I'm so used to like jumping in and being able to take a hit. And Grayson has a lot of HP, but without armor, his AC is technically 9. Because it's 10 plus your dex mod, which is -1.
Yeah, so that's great.
And I don't get the benefits of heavy armor, which reduces the martial damage I take by 3. So I take the full brunt of everything that hits me. I can't deflect anything. Basically, I'm just a free target, and I have to soak the damage all, and I can do damage back. Grayson is not a heavy damage dealer, but even barehanded, it basically I just like, okay, I'll just smite for this
So
attack.
what you're saying is that you're basically Iron Man.
Yeah.
Without your armor,
Yeah. He's totally. Yeah.
you're not even a billionaire playboy philanthropist.
No.
You're just
He's
Grayson.
nothing. He's nothing without the suit. No, that's not true. Because I still like even without it,
you could have made another suit.
Yeah,
in a cave.
I made it in a cave with a box of scraps. I did. I mean, I smote a ninja with my bare hands, which killed it. Somebody's here, probably Tom. And then I also used my channel divinity to damage another guy and take him out. So he's not without his abilities, thankfully. But it is like. Still at this low level, it's not like he doesn't have a lot of spell slots to use, so I can only hit so many times. Oh yeah, BSB Care says I thought you were going to spend a bump to grab a table or something for a makeshift shield. I thought about it. I had this idea that a bunch of guards were going to come in or something for the Bard College, and I was like, well, he's not going to fight them, so I get a chair and push them all out of the way or something like that. But we never fought any like civilians or anything like that. So yeah. Tom is here setting down his stuff. He was here for a second and then he just left. He's like, nah, you got this.
Nope.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Tom is the Lord of the Lies.
Yeah.
That's why it's the first topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this guy Misty steps away and you guys go after full on chase mode, initiates the Hong Kong action sequence, and you guys are basically running through the Bard College, wreaking havoc as the party tends to do when it goes through there. But the thing that I liked was that you guys quickly caught up to him, which I'm not sure if that was Tom's plan, but we will hear from the master himself, the Tom Lommel dungeon guy.
Yeah.
Dungeon guy. That's what they call me, is Dungeon guy. I'm officially changing my name to Dungeon guy. We made it.
Yay.
Is Dom the Lord of Lies? That's a great question. Yes. Quickly caught up to what? What's the issue at stake?
Quickly caught up to
when we were chasing the demons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't Asmodeus. He was just.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I chose to run that as like an actual on the grid combat.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't sketch it out that way to begin with. If it was Theater of the Mind, I think he would have probably fudged it a little more so he's further ahead. But I decided to run it according to actual movement rules and stuff like that. And so Stop. All right. And so he could only move 90 feet, right? You had 30 foot of move, so that's a double move. That's 60. And he had a bonus action to cast Misty Step. That gives you another 30. So the most he could do is 90. And I think Gaurav Misty stepped too, right? Isn't that how he caught up to him right away?
Yeah, the first.
So I mean, yeah, he caught up to him right away. Also, the party was burning bumps to do their, Hong Kong Kung Fu theater action stuff. And I'm like, well, that's worth 5 to 15 feet of movement, right? It's not a full move, but if you can think of a creative way to create a shortcut, that's what it was all about,
Yeah.
right? That's what it was for. So I don't think it was so surprising from my side of the chair or side of the DM screen that they caught up to him right away. But I also knew that number one, I could call in those ninjas basically kind of whenever I wanted to. I wanted the party to kind of get a little bit ahead of, get a little bit deeper into the action. I didn't want him to have them instantly waiting. But I knew that they were on reserve, and that was going to bog things down as soon as those guys jumped in.
Yeah.
So it was also, it was interesting to see, the party, succeed and fail at different things. I liked the fact that Thawne gets right in his face and is about to do something nasty, and he looks at him and gives him this baleful glare, and it knocks him out for 2 rounds. It felt kind of crappy to knock Gaurav out of the combat for 2 rounds, but also you're not just messing around with some schmo, right? He's not some dotty old professor at the college. He's clearly in deep. So yeah. I don't know what else. Where else you've been with the recap, or where?
We just basically recapped what happened and the chase and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I liked. I don't know. So to me, the recap goes: they have a conversation with Ravindare, potentially learn some things. Then he decides to abruptly end the interview, flees. There's a chase through the hallways, which was fun and interesting, and they defeat Ravindare and then realize that things in the city are have escalated, have taken a turn for the worse, right? So some of those things were unlocked by chat. Some of those things, I mean, everything. I don't offer chat something if I haven't already kind of considered well, where could this go, right? But yeah, that's the short version of the recap. In terms of specific things that we have on the agenda today, I thought it was interesting that one of the chat unlocks was Ravindare basically spills his guts, right? He's willing to tell you all the details to the plot, right? And the party was like, well, this guy's in league with Asmodeus, who does nothing but lie, so why do we care about anything that this guy says? And so for me as the GM, I was like, okay, that was where I miscalculated kind of their perspective on what was going down versus what I was putting on the table. From my side of the DM screen, it was a very honest and sincere, what do you want to know about the plot? I will tell it to you. And from the player's side of the screen, it's well, this guy lies all the time, so we're never going to get anything useful out of him, so let's just murder him.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I think since we're talking about both the Ironkeep game and the Lords of Greyhaven game, I think we both had that DM experience of, the player's perception of how this situation is going to go is very different than what I as the DM was thinking when I sat down and put it together. Or maybe just the pieces of it that I saw on the table when I put it together are different than the pieces that they see when I actually set it out before them, right? So, yeah, that was interesting to me. I don't know that the party caught on to the fact that he knew he was busted, and so he was like, I'm going to buy as much time as I need for this ritual to kick off to keep them busy, and then I'm going to try and GTFO.
It was, there was something why isn't he fighting us yet? This is, normally it's you've unlocked my plan, and then it attacks us, and then we're in combat, and it's you've unlocked my plan. So what do you want to know about it? And you're like,
yeah, it was. I mean, that was a weird moment for me to construct, but I I don't know. I wanted him to, like, he did. I realized, like, okay, well, he's revealed himself, but he could reveal himself as this unearthly creature, this otherworldly creature, and then try to co-opt you a little bit. Like, that was a tough scene because it's not going to work against your character, right? And it didn't have any purchase with any of the other ones. So, yeah. So at any rate, that role-playing scene was awkward because he kept trying to make offers that the players weren't honestly interested in. So that part of it felt a little tricky. Although, from my point of view, I thought it was interesting that he's basically sort of proposing, like, why isn't our society a meritocracy where the people who are good at fooling everyone else get rewarded and the people who are dumb enough to get scammed by everyone else get exploited, which, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if he's lawful evil or chaotic evil. Is that BSB care? I can't.
That's Wraith.
Wraith 42. Yeah. So he was sort of giving the pitch for evil isn't as evil as you might think, or as different from good as you might think.
Yeah. Well, I know from, like, Grayson's perspective, like, he kept saying freedom, 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 and then it's like, well, we, use this ritual to control the people we can't, and, it's like, and why shouldn't we control people? It's like, there's an inherent flaw in your logic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's definitely a really twisted worldview and philosophy. But I agree with Chat a little bit that, like, it's fun to. Yeah, you're probably right. He probably is pitching lawful evil.
Yeah.
Although it feels like, it's weird to pitch lawful evil as you should use free will.
Yeah.
In service of the master, right? I don't know. It's ally yourself with this guy, and I was thinking in the car today, and it's like, if all he does is lie, well, we call that person, insane, right? They're a buffoon. But somebody who skillfully mixes truth and deception.
Yeah, the best lies are
right. That's
mostly true.
That's a master politician, right? So anyway, there was some interesting ethical quandaries there, or philosophical arguments that were presented. I knew we couldn't let it drag on too long, but I did want him to be able to try and explain the plot as much as the players wanted to hear it, is what it turned out to be. I wanted him to explain the whole plot because that was one of the things that Chat unlocked. Is like, he'll tell you whatever you want to know. But yeah, you kind of like, is there any incriminating evidence? Okay, we're done with our question.
Yeah, it's like, that's, because I guess, like, I don't know about the other players, but I wasn't, like, I knew that there was a plot, but I didn't perceive, like, the scale of it until we saw the aftermath of it actually happening in the rituals. Because I was like, they're recruiting, we stopped them at the theater, they're recruiting some bards. So if I get this book, I can stop before anything bad happens.
Right. And interestingly enough, that's one of the things that Chat unlocked is it's worse than the players think.
Yeah.
Right? So there is that potential where it was just a small sleeper cell, and you kind of nipped it in the bud it was in the nascent kind of deployment stages, right? But that's clearly not what actually ended up happening, thanks to our Chat donations. I will say along those lines, I wanted to kind of tie off a bunch of this mystery investigation stuff. It really felt like it was bogging down, and also it was really like, it's really telling that the players are tired of it when the mastermind behind the whole thing goes, well, what do you want to know? And the players look at each other and go, I don't know, what do we want to know from this guy? It's like, okay, guess what? We're officially done with this style of play. And so I thought the whole, like, introduction of whatever this weird fire ritual, human sacrifice thing is, like, let's set a clock running, the players feel some pressure, let's raise the stakes on the whole thing. We've got, 2 or 3 sessions before the end of the year. We got 3 sessions before the end of the year, and depending upon what we decided to do with those, it's time to really, like,
Yeah.
raise the drama of the game.
And
so.
mystery is always, I mean, the few times I've run Delta Green, it's always so challenging because it's like you walk into a room, roll to see if you notice anything. You don't, so it's like, oh, well, that kind of stops it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the gumshoe system is interesting because it's a mystery investigation style system where you're going to learn the clues that you need to learn.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the interesting take on it.
But it's like,
it's tough to run, and we've talked about it several times on Disorganized Play, like running mystery investigation.
But when it works like, because when we were, the last session with Amy, when we were trying to figure out Gothius and stuff like that, and just when I put together that, like, because you'd mentioned offhands, like, nobody's buried in, like, ground, they're buried in, like, pocket dimensions, and then, like, it's like this is, like, oh my, it's in somebody's grave in a pocket dimension, that's where we have to look.
Yeah. It's interesting because that was from my point of view a very A to B to C trail of clues that you followed, and so it was easy kind of to build the rising dramatic action of that session because you knew, okay, well, where do we go next? We find this thing. Okay, now who do we talk to next? We find that thing, and then we go to that, and it naturally flowed. It wasn't necessarily a very deep, like, let's sort through all these clues and figure this stuff out. But it certainly was like, let's get another piece of the map.
It's like it's an escape room thing. Like an escape room is an inherently linear thing. Like you'll find all this stuff, but you have to. There's a very clear method of solving an escape room if it's done right.
And in this adventure that we're playing, they have deliberately kind of built some false or there's some parallel leads where whoever hired Gingy. Implemented that plot without whoever started the riot, like knowing that they were going to do that.
Yeah.
Like those two things happen as a coincidence, but it's weird to have a coincidence in a mystery game, right?
Yeah, I think that's been a hard thing like to rectify. It's like because we were following the poison for a while and also the rioters, and it seems like that those are like parallel branches that are never quite connecting.
Yeah, they never really like touch up. And also, I feel like we've been playing this for something like 7 sessions now or something like that, and you just start to lose the clues. Like 2 weeks ago, I when Gaurav was on, I said, you guys should just sit down and make a list of all the evidence that you have and see if you can connect it.
Yeah.
You know? And we sort of got there with Xanathar, where Xanathar was like, well, what do you know? You know? I didn't intend for that letter that Xanathar gave you to be this big crowning piece of like, boom, there's the the evidence that fingers the guy, but you dropped it on the dude that it mentions in that meeting, and I was like, well, okay, we've just like that's why I felt like we had to like tail off the investigation because it came to a natural point where it resolved itself. Okay, we've got the guy and we've got the goods on him. So let's just turn him into the cops and we're done here.
Yeah.
So, I really cannot read anybody's name on the gray screen here, but yes, playing in a mystery game like this inherently requires players to act in both an inquisitive manner and to help build the story themselves, while needing a flexible GM to adapt and extrapolate what the players are deducing. As we've talked about before, like you have, as a DM, you have a set of notes that you have created a context and a framework and relationships between them, but the players have their own set of notes, and they've decided what they think is relevant, and they're creating their own context, and it's very unlikely that those things match up one for one, right? So then you have to go, oh, okay, well, their idea is better than mine, or they're just determined to chase this guy down. Here we go.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what the second thing was on. We talked about the Lord of Lies. Oh, we talked about Kung Fu Theater, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about, I feel like we've talked about different ways of using bumps and things like that before on Disorganized Play, and last night really was a way to test that system. And one of the things was, when I came up with this idea of he's going to take off, right? Because I considered having like a stand-up fight in his office, but it was such a confined space that it really felt like it was just going to turn into 4 people wailing on a dude.
And it made so much more sense from his character and like what his deal is to be like, okay, and leave, than stick around and fight.
And by the same token, I didn't want him to just like snap his fingers and teleport away.
Yeah, because that would have felt like that, whenever that happens in a game, that feels like well, you're not supposed to fight this guy, so bye. He rocks fall.
Yeah, either it turns into I made a guy who's way too overpowered for you, so go F yourselves. I'm the DM. I've got all of the, masterful, plays in my little playbook here, and too bad for you.
Get back on the railroad.
Yeah, go grind some more XP. Or it turns into one of those negotiations of like, wait a minute, I use my reaction to cast counterspell. When I see him starting to cast a spell, what do you mean he just got away? It turns into one of those situations where you start fighting with the game rules to prevent a railroading situation because the players are immediately like, I don't get to do anything. Yeah. So that's difficult, right?
Because I thought it worked well because it was like, it got to the point, like, I mean, the Kung Fu Theater bumps thing helped a lot, but it got to the point where it's like, we might not be able to catch this guy. Like, there's a good chance we could fail this.
Yeah, it was a great moment of high drama when he drops the ninjas in and they come in and just start to like
Their first turn they knocked me and
that was their
out.
second turn.
Oh yeah, second turn.
Second turn.
They knocked us down.
Yeah. So that was fun. I do agree that it was an interesting blend of you get to throw a bump down and create some cinematic, over the top kung fu action move of swinging on a hanging curtain or swinging from the chandelier or hiking yourself up the balcony or whatever. And then combined with kind of the balancing factor of, all right, well, you have to make a skill check to see just how well it actually pans out for you.
Reminds me a little bit, there's a system I've run a few times called kick ass or chew bubblegum. And you can either kick ass or do anything else. And those are the two stats in the game. So it's like, can I do this? I was like, that doesn't sound very kick ass. So I guess roll. And it's like, oh, I didn't. It's like, but if you try and kick ass at it, you might be more likely to have that succeed.
Is it based sort of like on the lasers and feelings engine?
No, it's literally like you get bubblegum. I think everybody starts with like 5. And if you have to roll against that. And it's like, if you want to like kick ass, you have to get a 5 or above. And if you want to do anything else, you have to get a 5 or below. Mm-hmm. And then as the game progresses, the amount of bubblegum you have shifts. So the less you have of bubblegum, the more kick ass you can be.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will. I don't know if we'll have, when the next time is that we'll have a chase. It certainly was fun. I did want to make this, when I was putting this encounter together, I was thinking to myself, wow, it would be great to have another chase like we had with the cards, and you draw the cards and do the skill checks and stuff like that. But I wanted this to be more of a combat style thing. And then I also just wanted to kind of like break the rules framework a little bit in terms of let's do some of those cinematic things that we've all seen in a wild kung fu movie of break off a table leg or whatever. I was surprised nobody tried to trip him.
Yeah.
Harold01. Yeah. Harold01, thank you for subscribing. Very good. You get a reroll that you can apply to someone in one of our games. So I didn't want to have like a mechanism for that, but I liked the fact that it was like limited by how many bumps you had to. I thought it was an more interesting way to spend a bump than just like I'm going to juice this up by 3 or something like that, right? It made bumps have a little more they had a little more meat to them. Although I don't know that I would want that to always be in play. Yeah. I liked the idea that like, oh, okay, we're going into kung fu action mode now. It's going to be for this limited time. That's what bumps are going to be for. Yeah.
I think we did a good job of it, but I know just the more experience you are of a player of D&D or any system, the more in it you feel, and the more like the less creative you get, I guess, about how you approach certain things. You think about like the spells you have or the actual mechanics of it, and you kind of tunnel vision on it. So it's hard to like keep like, especially when a situation like that, when it's like you can kind of bend the rules a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, it's like I know what I would normally do, but what do I, so it's...
Yeah, there definitely is like a struggle that even I had, like coming from just that deep tradition of D&D, of the DM decides basically everything about the reality, and you, the player, have this thing that's on your character sheet that just tells you what dice you roll in order to manipulate, like in response to what he says. And this is certainly one of those situations where you're giving the players agency to just create stuff. And the DM, for me, for the most part, is like, I'll buy off on that. How many windows are there? Yeah, all right, there's a lot of windows.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it comes down to. You know, the first time she spent a bump to do it, I was like, well, you need to spend a bump because that seems like a huge advantage. And then she spent another one. And then once she had sunk 2 into it, I'm like, wow, why would I take it off the table now?
Yeah.
Why'd I make you spend another bump to activate this power that you've already spent 2 bumps on? So, I was happy with how Kung Fu Theater worked. I did think it was a nice compromise between having that chase scene where things intervene and there are obstacles to overcome. That was sort of set up in the terrain and the nature of the chase, but also have a little bit of that high cinematic aspect that you see in a Kung Fu movie. So I liked it. I don't know whether, if we go forward with it, if it'll still just cost 1 bump. I could see it being like a 2 bump kind of thing or whatever. Although I thought it worked out the way it was.
Yeah.
It just depends. There's so many different things that we've got a number of different things on the table right now that people can donate for. So the number of bumps has sort of been going down as a result, right? So those are my thoughts on last night's game. It felt a little bit rushed of like Talia Van Devere comes back in and goes, hey guys, you got to look at this.
Yeah.
That felt a little rushed because the players were just catching their breath, and I was like, let's move on to the next scene. But I think it got to a different, interesting place. We unlocked something that'll come up next session, and we can talk about that on Tuesday. So overall, I was honestly like nervous coming into this session because all I really knew was that he was going to reveal the plot, and then something else had to happen, and I knew there was going to be a chase. And then I wasn't sure where it was going to go from there.
Yeah.
And then I started making notes about like, well, how do we connect to something that we could wrap up? How can we bring this? It's time to bring the storyline to a close, right? So we have to start chiseling away at the things that we have open and bringing it to a resolution. And I'm like, what's going to not only bring it to a resolution, but also provide a dramatic boost to the end here to push through. Yeah, we've got some things on the table, but definitely like there's a clock ticking. They've got to make a move. They got to call, and it sounds like if Laryl Stormhand is missing, like that's not good at all. Has this been asked and answered? Why did you choose redemption for Grayson? Paladin Path of Redemption.
Yeah,
Oath of Redemption.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at Xanathar's when I got it, and I was like, is there anything interesting? And most of them weren't. But at first, Redemption seemed similar to Protection, and like, because a lot of them are like war or death or all these things. I was like, that's not, like none of these would work for Grayson at all. And then I saw Redemption, I was like, oh, it's kind of Protection with a little different flavor. And then,
soda.
Yeah, I'll take a diet.
I'm doing Dom Zook's job now.
Yeah. And then, like, as I kind of thought about it, I liked the mechanics of sending damage back to someone if they damage someone, like if I'm unable to protect them, versus just turn undead and channel divinity. Because I already have a magic weapon, whatever it was. I like the channel divinity a little better. And then as I thought about it, I like the idea that, because I didn't want to play, because when we revealed that Grayson was a doppelganger, I was like, and like, because we've been planning that for a little while, and we still haven't really figured all the stuff out about that. But I didn't like the idea that I was kind of felt like I was going for, where he's like hates himself, and I was like, that's not as interesting to play as he knows what he is, and he thinks he could be a monster like all the doppelgangers he's met, but he feels like if he tries hard enough, he could be better, and so can anyone else. Like, I thought that was a more interesting aspect, the idea that like he feels like he has to redeem himself for what he is, and he thinks that anyone can be redeemed if he can be redeemed.
I love the idea that he's a doppelganger who is not comfortable with pretending to be somebody else.
Yes.
It is so it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's everything about doppelgangers is that they don't like being one thing for too long, and it's actually uncomfortable for them to maintain the same visage for too long, and he revels in that. He like, I mean, some of that is just things like, I think just the way he was probably raised.
Right.
I have this idea of like he was adopted or whatever happened, and at one, like when he was a baby, and then like one morning his parents checked and he was a different baby, and then he's like had to hide it his whole life, so he like inherently hates what he is, but now he feels like he can be better.
Do you think? So you don't think his parents are doppelgangers? They're.
I don't know. It could be. It's possible that they would be. But if they, that would also be interesting too. If like his parents are doppelgangers and have chosen this life, and maybe they were on the run or whatever happened to them to choose to be the Graysons, and then he was raised in this world. I think that's an easier thing to wrap your head around, that he was raised to be a human by two people who want to be human.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of places to go with that, and I think there's room. We'll be exploring more of that probably on the other side of the Christmas holiday. So, yeah. And that's I don't have a lot else to say about last night's session, except that like I literally had a Post-it notes worth of notes about what could potentially happen, and I was very gratified that, I don't know, everybody was in a really good mood last night, and it just sort of it took off, right? Like the whole session, I felt fun and entertaining from end to end. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
fun and interesting session.
It's a lot of fun.
So let's move on and talk about Lords of Greyhaven. I watched the whole thing this morning, watched/listened to it. Do you want to talk about how you thought it went and what you felt the triumphs and challenges were, or how do you want to approach it? It's your show.
We can talk about it. You can chime in, Chat can chime in if they have questions, or. I thought it went well. I've talked to Dom a little bit about this and some of the other, and like Jordan Caves about it. I thought it played well. We hit everything that I meant for us to hit. The players are fantastic and were great to work with. There were just like things like I'm not a super experienced GM, so they're just things I need to be better about. One of the most obvious things is I kept forgetting what accents I was doing for the different characters.
I thought it was interesting because with the voices you're doing and whatnot, it for me it felt like it had a very Adventure Zone kind of vibe to it, right? Like the McElroys do. Like it felt very like contemporary D&D.
Yeah.
That kind of like, well, we've got modern day New York characters in a fantasy world, and guess what? If you don't like it, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's our style of kind of like fun, cartoony kind of casual kind of game. I like that part of it. So I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, and we all fall into that.
Yeah, like there was the prophet, the last character they fought, one of the lords. I had this whole plan where he was going to have a Russian accent, and I just completely forgot about that until after the game, and I was like, well, I guess someone else is going to have a Russian accent because that's there.
I think one trick you can do to try and alleviate that sort of thing is, if you're organized enough to put your NPCs on like their own little index card, and just give each one of them a catchphrase.
That's I felt I didn't do I did kind of a catchphrase, which helped. I think with just the motivation, because I know the warden. I stole this line from a movie trailer when I was just doing research, and it's like, we take the garbage that the world doesn't want. Right. And I was like, that's her motivation. And I've done that for some of the other characters that are coming up, and just I'm trying to like make interesting characters.
It's hard to do that and not feel like you're in your notes the entire time and not actually having an interaction with the characters.
Yeah, and a few things like I sort of just picked on the fly that I think worked really well. Like they met this halfling who they lucked out because the opening was like they were on a ship and I wanted it to be attacked by like pirates who were very weak and they were going to dispatch very easily, and then it was going to be revealed one of them was one of the guys who snuck on was like a spy who sells information to the company or whatever, and they were fighting, and then the last person up was up and was very hurt. Kelsey was like, I intimidated him. I was like, well, then that's the spy, that's the character that worked out very well. I didn't have to invent like, oh, also there's this other guy, and then the hunter. I actually, like, for a lot of the NPCs, I had a general idea of what I wanted, and then I just used an NPC generator for the rest, and there was like an option for like a funky backstory, and the hunter, it just said he's followed around by a magical floating disc, and it didn't say anything else about that, so I invented this whole backstory about how he was put on this island, and whoever is paying to keep him here has this magical runic disc that follows him just to watch him, suffer on this island, and that just was yeah.
That's what it does.
Yeah.
All right. I was listening as I was driving in the car and stuff like that. Did they actually manage to separate the disc from the guy? No. Okay, still following him around.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was. I thought that was another piece of it where I was like, oh, this is like the Adventure Zone where we introduce something weird that is just the way it is, and maybe you'll find out later, but there's nothing you can do about it now, which is fine, right? I thought that was interesting. So yeah, I thought that and having the prisoner guy actually like surrender and then tell them a bunch of information, I thought that was a pro DM move for sure.
There was always supposed to be a guy that was going to be that guy, but I just decided that since they let that guy live, that's the guy now.
So I do have a question about character creation. Like, what level are the characters, and did the players make them up, or did you assign them to them?
They all made up their character. I just said you can make a level 5 of your choice. That was the only direction. I was like, I said I don't really care about stats or anything like that. Just pick a concept that you think is really cool, because that's all I really am interested in is having something that you enjoy playing.
Right. Because I think that's one area for a short, like a short narrative arc like this. I would have considered making. I know it's more work, but I would have considered making the characters for them.
Yeah.
Because I think there were two factors at play. One was I think the players came in with a pretty good idea of who their characters were, but they didn't have a good idea of who the other characters were. And then not only that, but we've got a new cast at the table, and they're also sort of like feeling each other out. So I think there was an opportunity to give them, okay, well, you guys you're all new recruits into the warden's army, and here comes the staff sergeant to come in and bitch you out and dress you down and give you the mission, and you're going to go do it and get them onto the ship a little bit quicker. I thought it was interesting what you did with the various, like, where are you, and you slowly, like, this mercenary guy or the recruiter guy comes around and rounds everybody up. But it felt like there was, on two levels, the players kind of feeling their way into each other's characters, and also the players feeling the table dynamic. Yeah. And when both of those things are being negotiated, I think it slows, it bogs the experience down a little bit. It can kind of suck the concentration out or the flow of what's going on. So I think next time I would suggest give them pre-gens and maybe let them tailor them to, like, here's a cool thing that you can do or whatever. Because it has a little bit of a feel of like a convention style game, right?
Yeah,
we're only going to play this 4 sessions.
So
here you go. But yeah, it was interesting. I like the fact that, I appreciated the fact that you're trying to do sort of like almost like a mini session 0 at the top of the thing.
Yeah. I thought that, like, it was interesting because I was like, they don't know each other, and that was why I did that. I was like, I'm going to try and introduce them a little, because I didn't want to have, like, you guys all meet at a tavern, and an old wizard says, oh, good, So I was like, I'll try something a little different, and then as I did that, they were all like all of their characters, like some of them based on backstory I knew would be like, hey, there's this adventure. They're like, yep, I'm gonna go. But like they were all immediately on board with all of the. And I was like, okay,
Right. Yeah.
I was expecting a little bit more, like maybe some role playing or negotiation. But all the characters were like, yeah, that sounds cool.
I think honestly, I think part of that is the players all being like veteran streamers.
Yeah, so they know that
they're not going to fight with some bullshit thing
Yeah.
like, well, how much are you going to pay me? 10,000 gold pieces? I need 22,000 gold pieces and not a dime less. You know, they're not going to. They're not going to do that to you, right? So in which case, then it's like an opportunity. Like, let's hand them a strong reason to be together and build that kind of esprit de corps with the base of whatever you give them. Although I liked I think they got there by halfway through the session or so. It was the lead up to getting onto the ship and really getting into that ship navigation. Like once the ship combat broke out, I feel like everybody started to go, okay, well, I get the flow of this. I know what's going on now. But yeah. So that was just one observation that I had. I was curious, like what the character creation was like. I wasn't sure what level they were, and I think it's okay for you as the DM to prod them with story hooks that you supply when it's a one shot like this. Oh, look at these little chat, and the little chats they're not gray on black. They're actually legible.
Yeah.
Ah.
It's it's just I don't know. It's because I was like, I've got 4 sessions. I want to try something. We'll see how it works. So I didn't. Yeah, it's interesting how all of that plays out. But yeah, I agree. I definitely could have like forced that or like found a more easy way to get all the players on board. But I'm happy they were all very much on board with it.
What happened? Don't go to sleep on me. There we go. Yeah. I mean, it worked out.
Yeah.
No doubt. I think it's one of those things where if we're going to talk about like, okay, well, let's observe and what could we learn and what could we do differently, etc. That was the main place where I thought there was an opportunity to make some shortcut choices, and also it enables you to make some choices that are maybe tied into what's going on the island, or at least tied in relationship-wise together. That kind of gives them some gristle to chew on, and then they can build it up or ignore it as they cheat. Because
I told them all the very small overview. It was like, you were all hired to go to an island to take out some prisoners that got too powerful, and make a level 5 and make it interesting. And that's really all they had to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everybody's got a fairly interesting character, so a lot of that stuff is successful. So yeah, I don't mean to say that it didn't work. I think
it could have.
There could have been a shortcut there that would have compressed that or minimized the double awkwardness that was going on.
Yeah, definitely.
And then also given you maybe some even stronger avenues to pursue as it related to the specific mission.
Yeah, because
you know what's interesting to me. I don't know. You can go ahead and say what you want to say.
No, I was just going to say because I don't have really backstories for anyone, but Sam sent me their backstory, which was very, very detailed, and then I got a little bit of backstory from Kelly, but I didn't really know much about Kelsey or Jordan's character walking in, so I was like, I can find ways to tie the other two into the story somehow, maybe someone from their past or something is in there, but I don't have anything for the other two characters to really tie them into the story.
So the other thing that occurred to me, because this is exactly what I'm talking about, is the issue that you just brought up, was that I saw when I talked about earlier about how here's what I as the DM am putting together, and this is the presentation, the perspective that I have, and then you lay it out on the table for the players and they see it this way. Yeah. That's exactly what happened in your game too, where you were like, okay, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go to this island and murder a bunch of prisoners. And they were like, that sounds awful. Yeah. Whereas I think if you had pre-gened their characters a little bit, you could have said like, oh, you guys are a band of, patrolling soldiers, or your job is you are the wardens, or you've newly been assigned to the wardens. Like you got into an interesting morality debate that I'm not sure was was going.
Well, I kind of want to actually make morality part of it. Like the part of that opening fight was, that it didn't really come across, I don't think, too much in just like the way I told it and the way it played out. But the idea that the character that they saved had orchestrated all of these people to attack the ship and be slaughtered because he wanted to sell information and maybe get free. And just the idea of like, and they didn't question it. The hunter, I just said like, oh, he was just arrested for hunting in the woods. That's not why he's on the island, but no one's questioning why he's actually on the island. Like some of the people that are supposed to be good might not be good. And
on the other hand, the other guy was like, I'm in debtor's prison, right? I'm trying to work off this debt. And they're like, you're never going to work off that debt. We got to let this guy go.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting that they were like, we're not going to go murder a bunch of prisoners. That's immoral. And then the first guy that they actually capture, they're like, how much gold you got? We want those teeth. What do you got? You got gold teeth? I want all of them. Yeah. I was like, okay. So... that was interesting, but that's one of those situations where I could see the premise that you had put forth, and I've been in that same situation where it seems so clear cut. Like, oh, okay, well, great, and then they'll go to the island and they'll take care of the evil necromancer guy. That sounds very straightforward mission, and they're like, well, listen, the cycle of life, he's just recycling. I don't know why he's such an evil necromancer. I'm a warlock. I'm not evil. Oh, God, what? What are the players doing to my beautiful, simple, straightforward premise?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't want it to be that simple because, like, I haven't super written it, but, like, the first Lord, I mean, he was pretending to be a half-orc, but he was an Oni. Which
I love that.
Which again was the character creator. I was like, okay, I need a name for this guy. I know he's a half-orc, he's an acolyte, he's a whatever, and I'll get a name and some stats. And I click generate, and it was like, hey, so and so, like, and it gets you a few like character quirks, like it's like he doesn't plan for things, he doesn't he can't smell or whatever. And then like at the bottom, it's like he's secretly an Oni. I was like, well, yeah, of course that's what it is. That's a great thing. Thank you, random character generator.
It was super fun. Did you feel bad that that Jordan's turtle character basically stunned him, and then it was just like slice and dice?
A little. That's something that I want to. I was fine. I was talking to Jordan Caves Callerman about this. I'm okay with the fact that they weren't very challenged in the first game, and that they took out one of the first lords pretty easily. But I think in the future, I want there to be a little bit more challenge. Like I'm okay with the first session being kind of a face roll because they're getting to know each other and their characters. I think Kelly has never played Dungeons and Dragons before. She's played some other games, but so it was fine that they're giving them a chance to like become a cohesive unit. But I want to like introduce a little bit more challenge and be more mindful that because I thought. I just basically did like the whole calculation of like players are this level, what's a challenge rating? Challenge rating 7. Well, an Oni is a 7, so this should be a fairly challenging fight, I think. No, it was a round and a half, and he didn't get to do anything because I tried to charm a barbarian who was raging.
Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciated the number of combats that you actually managed to get into this thing, because you had the fight with the pirate, you had an interrogation scene, you did the hunter bait displace your beast combat, and you got into and a boss fight.
Yeah.
Like how many times in Iron Keep do we have 2 combats? Much less you had 3.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought that was actually fairly well handled. I will say the big factor that you have in terms of notching up the difficulty is whether you decide to let them rest or not, right?
Yeah.
Because they've just landed on the island, they don't know how dangerous it is, and when they're at the top of their game, they're full resources, full rest, full healing, that's when players always, characters always punch above their weight. But like you start, like if you have them start a combat and they're down 15 hit points, but they're also out of resources, now all of a sudden everything gets a lot more challenging, a lot more interesting.
I was hoping I would get a little bit more of that because like the first fight was easy. They were I think 1/8. There was 7 1/8 character like challenge rating characters, so it was like wiped the floor with them. The Displacer Beast actually got a few hits on Kelsey, but they didn't really use any. Well, only one of them has spells, and Sam didn't use any really. So.
And to be fair, like a Barbarian Rage is a resource.
Yeah.
His stunning things, those are a resource.
Yeah, he used a couple of keys. Kelsey used a Rage. Sam used, I think, 2 hexes.
And if now here's the thing. I think they're probably assuming like, okay, well, when night comes,
yeah,
we'll set a watch, we'll go to sleep.
That's something I was considering.
Everything will be fine. Now, I think that's probably a very like if you want to notch up the difficulty of the rest of the adventure, then nighttime is when shit really goes down.
I certainly don't want them to ever feel safe on the island. It's a prison island that occasionally has monsters that are there for some reason,
Yeah. Somebody asked the question earlier. If I scroll back, will I know? Will I know? Yes. BSB Care says, do you have a clear end for the miniseries, or are you going to sort of plan a big cliffhanger to be continued type of resolution to it?
I haven't fully
ending.
I haven't fully mapped out any of that. Very just vague sort of half ideas. The premise of this entire thing was, Jordan and Dom were like, hey, some of you, we've got kind of an open slot, and a lot of you haven't really run a lot here, so pitch us an idea. And the first thing that came to my head was there's this book I read called The Four Lords of the Diamond. It's a 4-part science fiction book about this guy who, 4 clones of him, it's kind of weird and it's hard to get through, get sent to these 4 planets, they're prison planets, and there's an organism that keeps the prisoners there, it gets into your DNA and you can't leave. But each planet has its own weird side effect. The first one is all he gets psychic powers. The second one is this weird body swapping one. There's one where there's no technology, so it's very fantasy. It's there's all these weird different. Each planet has this weird aspect of it, and I just like that idea of a weird place that the rules don't work the way you expect them to, and just you have to go take out the big threat on that, which is the premise of that book. So that's kind of just what I based it off of. So I just like the idea of going there and fighting, but also because that's a little boring. What if maybe the necromancer, when they finally do catch up with him, what if the other 3 lords who I'm mess around with are not exactly terrible people, or they do terrible things because of certain I haven't fully come up with the ideas, but I know the Barbarian Queen, who they're probably going to want to fight next. The idea is that she's she's a barbarian. She runs these bandits. They raid. They kill people. It's well, you can't really grow crops on this island, and she literally has a tribe of people that she has to feed and clothe. So she has to do. She does what terrible things for her people.
It's interesting that it's. I think you have an opportunity here to make this kind of a fantasy Mad Max style game if you want. I think it's tricky to play with the areas of moral ambiguity that you're working on.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. It's like the only way I could think of it working is when they finish off a lord, they find their journal, which they can read. I was like, that's not, so it probably will just be something in my mind that never really gets played out in the actual game.
I think it's also possible when you talk about those moments to have a thing where maybe they're fighting the big bad barbarian queen, and then she just stops fighting, and it goes, okay, look, I know you think I'm evil. If you want to kill me, go ahead and kill me for the things I've done. Yeah. I admit they're terrible, but I'm responsible for these people, and the only way I could feed them was burning down this village.
Yeah.
Or hunting down these mercenary guys who formed a chain gang and decided to enslave a bunch of our people or whatever.
Very Wrath of Khan.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wrath of Khan or Mad Max or Thunderdome or whatever, however you want to look at it. I think with the way that the party is already, then the option you need to leave yourself on the table is then it becomes less a game about let's punish these prisoners who have done their best to survive under very trying circumstances.
Yeah.
To, I would say, the final session needs to be, in fact, at the very end of the third session, there should be some sort of reveal where you're like, okay, this is how we go back and get the warden. This
Yeah.
is how I unite, these people against the warden, and we punish her for her immoral, kind of like, and just callous treatment of these people.
Yeah.
Right? Because it really is like it's not a system for rehabilitation.
Yeah.
It's not even like a sanctuary. It's just like we're gonna let you loose like a bunch of wild animals, and whatever you do is up to you as long as you don't become too powerful and come back and threaten us.
Yeah.
So the inherent promise of that premise is, of course, they
You
become
come
too
back,
powerful
yeah.
and they come back and you threaten them. And I think that's an interesting arc, and I think it would play well based on what I've seen. The attitude at the table.
Yeah, it's the Escape from New York aspect that that also kind of inspired this.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You had mentioned an NPC generator.
Yeah.
And Boulder Parchment Shears would like to know.
I looked it
What
up.
NPC generator are you using?
I'll
I'll throw a couple names out here. I use a thing for Android called Archivist Elements. That has a bunch of interesting things to it, Archivist Elements. And the other thing that I use is there's a name generator called FANG, big F, small a, big N, big G, fantasy name generator. That is actually a fairly good app for generating fantasy names. So those are two that I use right off the top of my head.
The one I used, I looked this up and forgot it. It's mpcgenerator.azurewebsite.net. Yeah.
Websites?
Yeah,
AzureWebsites.net.
Yeah. And it's just interesting because it's just a drop-down menu. You choose a race, sex, alignment, plot hook, which is either classic or funky, and then you can choose a class and a drop-down menu will like pick class, or profession, which you can choose like sub-arcs, like you choose profession and then like highborn and like whatever, and you just hit generate and it just like gets you some really interesting, it'll give you, the description of them, it'll give you some personality traits, their ability scores, and then like one little plot hook, like this one just randomly, she is constantly being psychologically tortured by a crazy leprechaun. That's, you might not use that, but like, it's just an interesting, you're like, that's, I think when I think about in other games when I've planned NPCs, they're not fully fleshed characters, or they don't have something interesting about them. So it's just nice to just throw something something weird about this character, like, or just a habit they have.
I think if you want to work around the idea of like what's moral in this particular weird kind of barbaric setting where there are no rules, right? There's no society, right?
Yeah.
Well, there must be some sort of society to some degree, and so I think you might want to spend some time kind of defining like who are actually like good guys and bad guys, and if you make them too gray, then the players are kind of going to get lost a little bit in the mission. The other thing that occurs to me is what is the evac plan here? Like, were they? Maybe I missed it, but were they given?
They were not, and nobody
thing?
asked about it. And so I was like, I didn't really plan about that, and I thought that at least somebody would bring up the fact, how do we get out of here? But at no point did anyone question it. Which,
see, I think beginning of session 2 is a great place to go. They meet somebody. It could have happened with this hunter guy.
yeah, I figured. It
would be nice if they met somebody else who was like, "Oh, okay, hey, welcome to the island. You're stuck here too." And they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, do you have a way to get off the island?"
Yeah.
No. Guess what, buddy?
Yeah.
You just got swindled. And now all of a sudden, that whole like that whole like weird kind of like those misgivings that they had about, like, I don't know, should we take this mission on? And they promised a lot of money. You know, you can have that NPC be like, oh yeah, how much did they promise you? A bunch of money? What did you get? Like a bag of gold teeth? Like, did they give you any equipment? No, they didn't give us any equipment. Give you any instructions how to get off the island? No. They give you a pickup point? No, they really didn't. Yeah, who did you piss off back home?
Yeah.
Like, congratulations, you've been duped.
Yeah.
and that really, like, will shift the whole perspective of the game into this revenge thing of, like, okay, well, how do we make friends on this island and get back and get our revenge?
Yeah.
And that, I think, now all of a sudden, what you've laid out at the beginning tilts 90 degrees or 180 degrees.
And then becomes less about, like, the next combat.
Fight the next big guy, fight the next bad. Now, there might be a guy who's genuinely evil, who's like, oh yeah, I control access to this magical portal that I've never been able to activate, but fuck you if anybody else is going to activate it. I'm going to, you know, maybe there's residual magical energy that he kind of culls off and uses to his own purposes or whatever. But now it does become that Escape from New York, Snake Plissken thing, where, well, you know, you're inside and now you got to get out. I think the players would love that.
Yeah, I think that's a great aspect, a great little angle to take it on.
Somebody said, BSBK says, what if this is how the warden actually gets the prisoners to the island?
Yeah, it's possible. Because I always saw the island as less like, oh, well, you've been on trial. It's more like where it's the black site, you know. It's Guantanamo. It's the place where we send people we don't want to go to trial, you know.
But I think it's so genius that it, like, at this point it's not like, oh, we had to, like, chain you up and helicopter you in and, like, you know, escort you under heavy security and you have to break out. They went voluntarily. Yeah. And how many of them, like Kelsey's character, was legitimately in prison?
Yeah, Kelsey's character is in prison. Kelly's character is a thief on the run from various people. Sam's character, they are a gladiator, so they won their freedom, but, like, that's not to say that they haven't done terrible things since then. The only one that doesn't quite fit is Jordan, but I could explain that away, like, you know, like the same thing that happened, I think, in the early days of in Afghanistan was people would be like, yeah, my neighbor's a terrorist. I'll take that $500. You know,
$500. They would give like $5 to $15 grand for those people. And I was like, I'll give it my cousin.
Or just like this foreigner guy who's not from your village is just moved in. It's like he's part of Al Qaeda. Send him to prison and give me $5,000. You know, it could have been that situation.
Right. Yeah. And I don't feel like that is, like, I don't think that kind of, like, shift, if that happens next session, I don't feel like that's a dick move where, like, haha, you got duped.
No, it makes perfect sense.
It feels, given the backstories that they have and stuff, like, oh.
Because it was weird, because I told them, like, you were on a mission to, like, take out these people, and all of them except for really Jordan chose very, like, dark, somewhat criminal backstories and characters, and it all kind of played to, like, yeah, these are the kind of people who might be on this island anyways.
This is also the sort of, like, cool narrative jujitsu move that takes the ambiguous setup that you had, which, having watched that first session, I felt was like, wow, it would be nice if this was, like, a little tighter and a little more pointed and a little more specific. But it takes, like, that aspect of it that it was not tight and it was not particularly specific and turns it into an asset, right? Yeah. It allows you to reframe that first session where they go, oh shit, we really should have asked a bunch more questions, I guess, or whatever. Yeah. As Wraith42 points out, there's always a straight person or an innocent person who is tossed in with the violent criminals who never did anything and they're just collateral damage of a corrupted system.
Yeah.
It does allow you, however much you want to get into the philosophy of, you know, the penal system and punishment and justice and all that kind of stuff. You can actually, like, explore those issues without having to do, like, a deep dive on philosophy and things like that. It does allow you to have some exploration of it, almost in the same way like last night where we had some really like it was almost like dissecting a little bit of the idea of a meritocracy or almost or of a skewed libertarian viewpoint of like, well, why shouldn't I be able to take advantage of people who are too stupid to not get taken advantage of? So you can have that, you can have an exploration of that and yet still have it be a fun role-playing experience that's not like, we're not going to solve the world's problems sitting around this table.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know, I would kick that idea around. I think we've all kind of like come upon something here.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, the guy who was doing the recruiting needed to meet his quota for the month or he would be off to the island.
Yeah.
That's why they recruited the turtles.
Yeah.
Like, needed one
He's
more.
like, he had one more. He was like, hey, you're not from around here. Yes, I'll go with you anywhere. Oh, thank God.
Yeah. So I think that's a really cool way to. It also definitely reframes how you structure your villains and things like that on the island. Who's actually a villain and who's actually helpful. And it also makes the party's exploration of the island far less one-dimensional. Yeah. Right?
Because that's something that it was just the first session, so I wasn't super concerned. But I like the idea that there's like a sort of wild magic aspect to this island. That's like the donation tier, Ben Luck, that's straight from a wild magic sorcerer. I wanted that to, it didn't really come off, I think, but the idea that in this place, because of just the way it is, you might hit something that you shouldn't have hit before. Like your arrow you might just kind of will it on target a little bit,
right.
And we haven't really got there yet.
Yeah, I think I love those sorts of things where you have the ability to sort of bend reality or something unexpected happens. I'm an old school fan of the Wand of Wonder. Yeah. I used to love that so much because it would just vary so widely from a stream of butterflies to like whatever 10 to 120 gems shoot out to fireballs and all that kind of stuff.
One of my favorite characters is my wild magic sorcerer, and I did this, like I had a wild magic surge, and only once was like, the first time it happened, it was, fireball, which was perfect for that moment because he was pretending he wasn't a sorcerer. And then like, it was just weird stuff. And then one time it was the flumph, and it was just one. So he immediately decided it was his son. So I just had this flumph companion for the rest of the game.
Yeah, the only tricky thing about those tables are there's always the temptation or there's the hope that what you're going to roll is going to line up perfectly with like the dramatic moment of rolling that percentile dice. Oh, I really need this to be, like, it's that whole like last ditch, like I need a fireball to come out of this because we're out of gas. Yeah. And honestly, like 85 times out of 100, it doesn't work out that way. Yeah. And you're like, all right, what am I going to do then? I'm a sheep. One
of the reward tiers is just straight stolen from Sean Graham's Dark Sun game, where they all discover they have inherent latent psychic powers, and I would have them roll against the second edition Psionics Handbook. And when we did that in Dark Sun, for some reason, it worked out perfectly for our characters. I don't know why. Each one of us got a power that worked out so perfectly for our characters. It probably won't happen, and that's only if chat unlocks it, but I just thought that would be a fun thing. Like, you can now do this. You didn't know you could do this, but for some reason, this island made this happen for you.
Yeah, I could see that being something too, where maybe there's some sort of like object or like Ioun stone or something that's attracted to you. That maybe it's not something that's in you; it's something that gets attached to you on the island, and then when you go away, the thing, even like a weird little invisible fairy or gremlin. Yeah. Like you have a little avatar that attaches itself to you. Have you read the Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman?
No, I have not.
So, just very briefly, in Philip Pullman's, he's got a trio of books called his Dark Materials. But basically, the idea is every child is born with a little avatar. So it's basically a little pet, right? It could be a little gremlin, a little demon, golden compass, yeah. And then when they become a teenager, there's this. Either the daemon mature, does it mature or does it go away? Or I don't remember exactly.
old?
Once they get through puberty,
No, they still have it.
they
They
still
still
have
have
it.
It still has their.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the Golden Compass movie. Yeah, and, like
Okay.
the idea that like there's this new sect where they're like, we have to separate these kids from this thing. You know.
Yeah. So it's this whole huge metaphor for like coming of age and sexual awakening and stuff like that. But I love the idea, just in general, that like you have your own little familiar that takes on different, that for you has its own form.
Yeah.
That could imbue powers to you or whatever. Who knows? I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways to go with it.
Somebody asked, and I can't see their name, if I'd mapped out the island. I have a map of the
Silent
island,
protagonist wants to.
but I don't know where anything is. I'm not great at maps, and I feel like maps, like a bad map is not worth the effort. You know, when a map is good, it's good. You know, so I don't want to force a map if it's not gonna like. And just randomly decide. So
You've already put a map on the table.
I
though.
put a map of. I have a map of the island, and I've marked 2 locations on it now. So now it's kind of forces me to think of where everything is in relation to everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this opens a debate for what style of game do you want to run, because if it's sandbox style, you put the map out and you go, you're here,
Yeah.
and let them go whichever way they want. You can give them pointers of like the hunter knows that this is over here and that's over there or whatever.
I might end up doing that because the Delta Green scenario I ran here once, and I've run it once prior to that. Essentially, it's just a map, and I go and I know what every room contains, and I know how they can get to the final location, but it's really up to them to decide how they get there. And it's an interesting way to play. It just, I worry like it's a military base, so it's relatively small, and it's like 14 rooms, but it's all within the same area, where it's like an island. It's like, do I have to plan out everything? You know, so it's.
Well, I think, so I think if you're going to go for this revenge scenario, escape the island type of scenario, well, before I get to that, let me ask you, what makes a map a bad map in your mind? What does that mean to you? Because I'm curious.
Just if not knowing where anything, just picking locations at random for things to be, like not having any idea of like the flow of where something should be, or why, because the
So things just being arbitrarily.
Yeah, arbitrarily
places,
there,
and
like
they're not connected to anything else.
Yeah, not.
I
I guess I just feel like with an island like this, I should think about probably more things than I actually should think about that I haven't thought about. Like I should think about like, oh, well, this is a stream, so clearly there would be settlements. If there's a settlement, it would be near this river. And I don't have to think about that, I'm sure. I'm just over analyzing it.
I think, there's a couple things. One, you only have 3 more sessions,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't have to be super detailed, realistic, complicated. And then secondly, I think it would be fairly easy to reverse engineer it around the idea that the players are now going to try and escape from the island.
Yeah.
Right? Like before, when it was just try and murder these remaining 3 dudes, it's hard to find like a motivation to like actually put those guys on the map in any meaningful order.
But now
right?
that I'm working with like the idea they have to like.
But now they actually have like a quest that's beyond just sword point A, slot B, right? So in that case, you can, if that's the quest, then think about, okay, well, what do they need to do to fulfill the quest? And I would suggest it's probably some sort of thing of, we need to go to this point with this magical MacGuffin that we've collected from someplace else, and use this particular fuel or incantation or power word or command word and activate the gate and go to the place that we specify, right? In which case, you go, okay, well, they've got 3 elements to collect, or I wouldn't do them more than 5.
Yeah.
But then you go, all right, well, let's put this someplace and put somebody attached to it. And why would they want to guard or live around that place?
Yeah.
What sort of obstacle are they? And then where are these other things and how could they collect those? and it doesn't have to be like a fully fledged, miniature ecosystem of, well, alongside the river there's a blah blah, any of that kind of garbage. I don't know, the TV went out up here, Dom. I don't know. We're fine on the screen, but the TV
It's
went
on. It
just went black.
I think it just cleared the.
I see. So you could. Oh yeah, I did. So you could decide what are the fetch quest items that I need to have them collect. How can I make each of those fetch operations interesting and different?
Yeah.
Maybe one of them is, you have to go into Thunderdome and fight somebody for the magic MacGuffin. Maybe one of them is you need to, earn it by saving somebody from the tribe, or you need to be indoctrinated into the thing, or swindle the guy out of it, or whatever it is. Like then it just becomes encounter design and drop those things on the map. And then it could definitely be like once you introduce that quest to them where they can see, oh well, if we knew this and this and this, then we could get out. Once they see that, then it becomes very easy, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's what I think. Escape from New York. Escape from New York is. Which one did I watch? Did I watch Escape from New York? Yeah, I watched Escape from New York. The Ernest Borgnine character is awful.
Right. They're pretty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
He parked in a 2-hour.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah.
It's 2 hours now.
Okay, fine. I'll move my car.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah, I haven't seen Escape from LA.
It's not good.
No, well, BSB Care says it's underrated. So, all right. So I think that's got some. I think that's got some interesting potential now. I really feel like that's a great revelation that has the potential, or had the potential to be a little bit dickish of like, well, you should go on my quest because I'm the DM. But I think with a new group of players and a new DM, I don't think it has that malicious feel to it the way that it could have. I don't think you're necessarily punishing. It doesn't feel like you're punishing real players, especially because they know it's a short arc. It's like, oh, well, now we all have to band together. Yeah. And as BSB Care points out, it would be like a very big, oh, wow, we really did screw this up. I think it would be dangerous in a long-term campaign, but I like that shift for a short-term one-shot. I'm trying to think what else we want to cover here today, because it's we've been going over an hour, almost an hour and a half. If you folks at home have any questions while Eric's out of the room briefly, I'm happy to answer those about last night, for those of you who tuned into Iron Keep. Overall, I was really happy with the session, as I stated before, and I was honestly nervous, where's this gonna go next? Because at this point, we're so far off the rails. I was like, I have to come up with something that really raises the stakes. I think, in my mind's conception, those 9 people are also Lords of Waterdeep who are being, ritually burnt or sacrificed. But that's a pretty big. That it would be all hands on deck. It should be all hands on deck anyhow, especially if Laurel Stormhand is missing. But I like the turn that it took, and I feel like we can kind of wrap it up in the next two sessions. It was a fun philosophical discussion with Asmodeus, with Robin Dare. I thought it was fun to explore. I knew that I was testing the players' patience because they were not going to accept anything from him. They just were not interested. And it was also a little bit repetitive structural-wise, where everybody that they encounter seems to want to make them an offer. Everybody wants to try and loop them in and tempt them. And so far, they've bitten on everybody. Xanathar, they've bitten on, Candor Cotton Hollow, the guy who had them do the heist job. They've accepted the mission from the director of the theater to investigate this thing. So they've gotten wrapped up pretty heavily in a lot of sketch type of things. And so to have him make that offer again was a little bit... Silent Protagonist wonders, would making a twist, like we're talking about in Eric's story, would you be able to wrap it up in just 4 episodes? And you do point out these are some good steps. Eric, silent protagonist, has some questions for you, which is like, okay, if this is what we're gonna do, if we're gonna make this big shift, right? Can we wrap it up in the 3 remaining episodes that we have left? Because you need to introduce this idea to them, do whatever they need to do to explore, get back to the island, and then go and get revenge against the warden, however they manage to do that.
I feel like it's possible. I mean, I'd probably have to condense some things, but because like when I was running this, I was very mindful of the clock. It's weird because when Tom's running a game, we always seem to end at like around the same time. We always go to at least 11, usually 11:30, and it doesn't feel like we're dragging things out or delaying anything. It always feels good. And this, I was like, kind of hit everything we're going, and it's just 11 now. So it's weird because you think about a game, it's 3.5 hours. So it's not a lot of time, but you do have a fair amount of time.
I think a big part of it depends upon how challenging you want a combat to be. Like last night, things got prolonged when those 2 ninjas came in, and I knew it was gonna like go a couple extra rounds because of that. Honestly, like that could have been the tipping point. If there were 2 more ninjas, I don't think the party wins that combat.
No.
Right?
Because I made a very conscious choice not a conscious choice, but I made the decision not to spend a lay on hands to get Havana up and instead to fight, which was probably a little less than optimal for my character story-wise. But as a result, I went down, and then that left us a lot more exposed because I can't take the damage, and the only one left with healing is Megan, and Gaurav's kind of out there on his own because I've always been kind of like there to keep people up. So it's interesting.
That's one of those things you just kind of got to feel your way through of like, because I was having the same, pangs of anxiety last night where I'm like, how do I fill 3 hours? What are we gonna do to fill 3 hours? And then we basically we hit it almost right on, right?
Yeah.
Like I was sort of rushing at the end there to get that last bit of the next story out. I was kind of trying to like look at things in chunks of like, okay, well this is a chunk of story. This is a reveal they're gonna need to spend some time exploring.
Yeah.
Getting your mind around how long those things are, that's the tricky part. And knowing how to pace or feeling your way around an NPC interaction. To me, an NPC interaction is the most elastic, right? Like you can either stretch it out or you can cut it off and it's over. Combat is kind of like middling, right? It's in there. It's like, well, if we need to wrap it up, guess what? Like these guys start dying or whatever. As long as it's not too heavy-handed or too obvious that you're trying to curtail that, that's fine. Then I think the one that's the most ambiguous is some sort of like planning or mystery exploration style of that mode of play, right? Because you never know what the players are going to try and follow. They're not sure what they're supposed to ask questions about. Everybody feels a little bit lost at the table, and that can either be like this interminable length of time where you're like, in order for you to get to the next thing, I need you to figure out this thing that I've been hinting at, but I don't want to hand it to you on a silver platter.
Yeah. And because the Delta Green game I ran, I'd planned that out very well, and it was like, it's fine if they don't hit everything. I know where this is basically going, and I can have fun with it. But this is like, because it's more than one session, it's like, okay, so I don't want, they're not going to beat the game in this. So I have to set up that there are other things, but how do I like lead that on and stuff?
Right.
I don't want to waste my time and plan things that aren't going to be used, because there's so much that I could plan, I don't want to overplan.
Right. It's like, how do I prepare enough that I always say, like, how do I prepare efficiently, where I've got enough stuff that the players are going to be able to tear their teeth into it, but I don't have so little that I feel like I'm reeling, or so much that it's like, come on, guys, let's go. Or I have so much that a bunch of it gets wasted and never gets touched, right? That's the part where it's like, eh. Now, with a sandbox style game, you sort of set yourself up for going, well, they might not go there, but that's also can be a rewarding thing for the players to know, like, oh, they can find their own path through the adventure. Somebody, so chat was discussing maybe they don't need to, maybe your party doesn't need to get revenge in this particular arc. Maybe they just need to get out.
Yeah, I figure what I'll do is when I introduce the idea of you never asked for a way off the island, you have to figure that out. I'll gauge what their thing is. If it's like, crap, we have to get off this island, or if it's, crap, we have to kill the person that did this to us, you know.
Right.
So they'll make that decision for me.
I think so. I've been thinking about, you know, how you would structure this quest escape mechanism type of thing. And I think what it really comes down to is, I don't know if you've answered this already in your mind, or if it's something that you need to put more thought into. But my question is, like, what is the origin of this? And you don't have to answer this now, but what is the origin of this island? Was there a civilization here before?
Actually, yeah.
Like, if you know the answers to those things, that's fine. But I think that's sort of like would be the players in. And I could see somebody like if this was an old dwarven like fortress, like then Kelsey's character like ties right into like, she does some digging, finds some old tunnels, and next thing you know, you're on this weird, you know, like journey of discovery kind of thing. Or at least you have a potential for that scene where the ancient dwarven spirits speak to her, or what have you.
The idea I was playing around with was that this island doesn't exist on this plane, or at least it's not supposed to. It's actually a chunk of another planar realm that is currently being held in this location, which is why nothing makes sense on the island.
Interesting.
Yeah, but that's not as interesting as I think. It's just like this is a weird, like, it was a dwarf city or an elven stronghold that was like this wizard occupied it, and there was a big chaotic thing, and now it's a weird island and nobody lives there anymore.
I mean, it could be one of those things where it's a double prison island, right?
Yeah.
So the people in the real world use it as a prison island, but this other dimension has shoved it into our realm,
like keep something,
as also as a prison world island.
I always had the idea that like there's something underneath it, like I don't know, some deity or some demonic thing or something that is underneath the island in some fashion, you know.
I think you have a number of hooks between Kelsey's character being the dwarf who loves to dig.
Yeah, I didn't consider that, but yeah, that's
uncovering something. And also Sam's character being this weird warlock warrior creature. Maybe they're in contact with something that other people haven't been able to contact, or maybe they can conjure something that other people haven't been able to touch.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a combination of those things, but there's
maybe
that sort of thing.
Maybe the island's on the back of a giant tortoise.
Jen Human says, it's easy to promote and explore and visit each area of each of the Lords of the Forest areas has a piece of the power object puzzle that will allow them to get off the island. Yeah. So basically, we would structure this as sort of a sandbox fetch quest kind of thing. Yeah. BSB Care says all you need to do is add something you need to break into or is locked, and you'll get Kelly's character.
Yeah.
I mean that you know, the great thing is you could potentially create, when you're creating these little quest things, you can use each of the characters' strengths as a potential avenue for them to have this moment of spotlight and shine. I think it's dangerous to necessarily build
that like they have to
a spotlight moment around just that. Like that's the only way to solve it.
This is all traps and locks. It's like, well, what if they fail a bunch of rolls? Like, how do I deal with that? But like giving, like,
or what if that player just completely like spaces it and doesn't see that this is their opportunity or what have you?
Like if I create something where it's like it involves like super quick movements that only a monk could do, and Jordan's like, well, I guess we can't do it. You know, it's like, no, you're the only one.
Why? So, Yeah, I think there's a lot of great ideas on the table here. Is there anything else that you want to touch on or talk about? Or
I was just curious because we've never had really a situation that I know of so far in Ironkeep, and I know a lot of it because a lot of the encounters we go up against are stuff that's pre-written that you've tweaked a little bit, but like just the idea of planning an encounter for people, especially people as powerful by the time you're 5th level, like that's like we're 6 in Ironkeep right now, like 5, 6. That's when things become. I know just as a player when death is less of a threat, you are getting so much more power, and like how you introduce like an encounter that's gonna be challenging, that without like being like, oh god, I just murdered my party and they don't realize it yet.
Well, so BSBK brought up something earlier that I have talked about at length way back when I was running Storm King's Thunder, which is to do a Rolling Thunder style of combat if you want to have a big showcase combat. And what I mean by that's kind of a military term, but you deploy like a wave of mooks who aren't particularly tough, and they spend 2 rounds and beat those guys. But immediately behind those guys is another wave of slightly tougher mooks, and then they fight those guys. And then behind those guys are the really tough guys, and then finally the big boss man comes out. Like we've seen it all in video games, right? The trick about that is it eats an incredible amount of time, but it definitely like steps up the odds. And the good news is if wave 3 is tough enough, you can always cancel waves 4 and 5, and the big boss man doesn't show up or go someplace else, or it turns out somebody within the group of wave 3 was the big boss man. So it allows you to very fluidly adjust the difficulty on the fly. So that is something that you can do. I would say the trick to making most D&D fights interesting is to always pair your showcase villain with somebody else who can steal focus and harass the party.
Yeah.
Right? So last night, even though a lot of it was running around and there were some saving throws getting traded and stuff like that, you were largely pantsing the villain during that escape until he brought in his 2 ninjas. Now, admittedly, they had really tough attacks. They didn't have a ton of hit points.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, the nature of the combat really changed, and you had to devote some resources to these guys who were going to schwack you, as opposed to just everybody pile driving on the big bad.
Yeah, it became less about like what's an interesting way that I can close this distance and maybe knock a little piece off this guy, versus like, okay, now this completely changed. It's like I have to actually fight something now, like properly fight something. Right. And I am not prepared for that.
And I agree with Wraith 42 that like the idea of minions, of creatures that hit hard up front but maybe only have 20 or 30 hit points, like you saw last night, right? Like those ninjas were very clearly almost like a minion style of thing.
They both only took half damage of the lightning bolt, and then 1 hit from me, which was not super powerful, from both of them, and they both went down.
Yeah, but that reflected radiance thing.
Yeah, that was heavy.
That was big. Like each of them took like probably about 9 points of damage from the call lightning, and then they took around 20 to 25 points. So they had somewhere on the order of 25 to 30 hit points, right? Yeah. Given the number of attacks that they could drop, they probably should have had more. I don't know, but as minions, like I like the idea of like let's get some damage out there. Let's get 2 people down on the battlefield, and then all of a sudden it starts to become a tipping point of what's going to happen next. The party starts to have to make some interesting choices, as opposed to what I loathed about 4th edition combat was like, I'm going to set up this zone and I'm going to mark this guy and I'm going to cast this thing and I'm going to do a slide, a slash, and I do 7 points of damage.
Yeah.
Oh, how many does he have left? 227. Oh God. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to do 35. You never did more than 20 points of damage.
I like the minions aspect though of 4th edition. It's like, here are these characters. They have 1 hit point. They there's a bunch of them, but they all have 1 hit point. And you can. So it felt nice, like knocking a bunch of guys down, but it was still like if you miss, like there were a lot of abilities where it's like half damage doesn't kill minions, so
Right.
you couldn't like just automatically kill all of them with like a bad roll. It's like you have to actually.
Still had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still had to schwack them. I don't remember which. It was a monster out of the Tome of Beasts that I used for the ninjas, and I don't remember which one. But so I would say that's one thing to make a combat interesting. You can use waves. You can definitely pair whoever your solo boss is. Like never have your boss be like a solo boss. And then the third piece of advice is have some sort of interactive thing on the battlefield that either the players can screw with or that the villain can screw with and unleash some nastiness on the party. Whether that's, there's going to be a lava vent that just randomly jets hot steam at players and they have to make a saving throw or what have you. I would avoid a lot of, even though I did it last night, avoid a lot of like stunning type of effects, right? Those things are tricky.
I've done that before where there was a counter I built for a one shot where it was like they started off on a ship and they were attacked by a monster, but I was clearly said there were 2 cannons right here, so they could fire those cannons. They only got 1 shot from each, but they had cannons. And then later, I think the climactic fight was in a hallway with like, if you stepped on this button, then a column would shoot fire in 4 directions. So if you got the guy there and you were close enough, you could hit the button and do a lot of damage to these creatures.
Right. Yeah. And so everybody in chat is making some good points of like, minions can help you really paint the scene and kind of like describe what sort of or shape what sort of combat you're having. That's why I had ninjas show up last night for the kung fu action thing, right? And if you can tie the environmental triggers thematically to whatever your big bad is or whatever. I also love the idea of like with a cannon thing, or maybe it's a catapult. If you can defeat the guys who are manning that thing, you can now turn it around and use it against somebody else.
Yeah.
Like players love moments like that where they get to like overcome somebody and then get the upper hand and fire this big one-shot type of like damaging thing. Then invariably they roll like horribly on their dice, and it turns they get they fire the trebuchet and it does 7 points of damage and they're mad at you. But that's the fickle nature of the dice. So those are some things that I would suggest in terms of making it an interesting combat. I think it's okay if it doesn't necessarily go more than 3 rounds, right? Like 3 or 4 rounds. Just to harken back to what we talked about earlier too, it's all very much a function of how much you let them rest.
Yeah.
And if they're coming off of a fresh rest, then hit them really hard up front and make them kind of second guess what they're doing, because they've got a bunch of resources that they can draw on to recover from. But if they haven't had a long rest in a long while, you can sort of chisel away at them a little bit and let them kind of like back themselves into a corner.
Yeah, and part of that, because there's no healing, and I was very conscious of that, and I was like, I want to give them an opportunity to heal, but I don't want to just let chat give them HP, because then there's a chance where it's like nothing's ever a challenge. So the one donation tier that I added was rub some dirt on it, where they can spend their hit die in combat as a bonus action, but they're still using the hit die that they have, so it prevents them from healing later on.
I think if you're going to play that style of game, which is very much sort of like a war of attrition style game, you need to make it clear at the beginning of next session, like, okay, everybody, how many hit points do you have left? How many hit dice have you spent? How many spell slots have you used? Because especially in a casual, 4-session one-shot, players, I know I as a player am terrible about remembering that stuff. And also, like, that level of bookkeeping suddenly changes the nature of the game, and I either get, like, engrossed in it, like, oh, okay, like, well, now I got to be careful.
Yeah.
I go into caution mode, or I get annoyed with it, like, guys, let's just figure out a way to take a long rest. I'm really getting aggravated.
It does, I noticed that with my play. It's in a normal Iron Keep game, I'm like, I probably shouldn't use this. But then sometimes I'm like, we'll probably rest after this, so I'll throw everything. And then we don't always rest. And then I'm like, we have to face Xanathar, the Crime Lord. 26 hit points and no spell slots.
Right. Well, and then that was part of like the factor last night in creating that combat was they were not wearing half of their equipment, like, or they're half equipped. That was it. That was one of the reasons I went to Kung Fu Theater was like, okay, well, let's take this disadvantage that they have where they're undercover and incognito and give them a fun way to turn it into an advantage where break it off, pick it up, throw it around, etc.
And I think you've done a good job of balancing, because there was like the theater fight. We finished that, and then almost immediately the next session jumped into another big fight and I remember I think Gaurav in character was like, should we, we're kind of hurt, should we go? And I was like, no, I'm going to go fight the big monster that we didn't finish off. You don't have to follow me.
Yeah. So there's definitely also some good points in chat about you can dynamically play with, if the contestants or the opponents in your environment have any kind of awareness, they probably know, okay, are the party badasses? We'll lay low for a while. Or is the party weekend? Maybe this is our time to take advantage. Like, you can dynamically kind of like adjust those slides and levers, etc. So and keep in mind that if you decide to play with this kind of like level of attrition, it definitely changes the pacing and the mood at the table. And whether that's good or bad, it's up to you. It's that whole thing of we're playing a fun, heroic, epic fantasy game versus we're playing a grim and gritty, down to the brass tacks. How many crossbow bolts do you have? Kind of a torchbearer style game where you don't know whether you're going to survive this thing. It's going to be a crapshoot. Now, I don't feel like that's the mood that you painted at the outset of the game. So I think it would be a big shift among the understanding of the table agreement for you to go, oh, okay, well, how many hit dice do you have left, etc. Like I think if you really were to clamp down, if you'd really be tight about that, people at the table would be like, if I'd known that going into it, I wouldn't have used 6 key points in the first fight.
Definitely.
So that's something to keep in mind. Like, I'm not saying you can't play that style of game. I'm saying think about using that to varying degrees.
I want that to be more of a part of it, but I don't want to be like, well, they can never long rest or they can never get any healing. I don't want to, because it was, as you said, like there was a very casual nature to how they were playing those encounters.
Right. All right. Is there something else? No?
Wraith says in Dark Sun, in the city states, you're pretty safe, but not if you're in the legendary free city of Tyr, which is constantly under attack from all the oppressors who don't like the freedom that Yenin and Markovich, the leader of the legendary free city, the sorcerer king of the legendary free city of Tyr, offered all of them. They were offended by the freedom that he gave freely. So they were constantly attacking him. It was never safe. It would return from an adventure. It's like, there's an army there. I'm like, God damn it, every day there's an army here. Guess we'll beat them too.
Maybe do you want to, we'll talk about, maybe we'll have a double disorganized play on Tuesday as well, where you can bring in some of your ideas and we can kick the tires around. Although then I won't be able to talk much about what I'm planning. But we'll think about that sort of thing, or maybe what we'll do is we'll have another check-in like next not this coming week, but the week after that. Who knows? I feel like this has been interesting and illuminating and helpful for me. I'm excited about the ideas that have come out of this.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're gonna wrap it up since we're almost on hour 2 here. But thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Tonight we have not Crit Juice, but Dungeon in a Box, America's GM, as we like to refer to him. DJ David Crennan is going to be here playing part of the campaign which he has assembled for his Dungeon in a Box offerings series, a subscription service that he is putting together, where you get a piece of an adventure, you get some miniatures, you get some landscape, terrain, etc.
There's a map
in the game.
There's like the miniatures. There's just flat plastic, and there's like 2 premium minis in there. It's a really awesome deal.
It's an interesting deal. So he's going to be showcasing part of that game tonight with, I believe, Dom, who's in that game? So Gurav,
Tom
Tom
Fonz, Matt Cook,
Fonz,
and I don't know who else.
Matt Cook, and then a TBD. Is it Eric Reichert?
I have
don't
not
know.
been asked. And I can't do it.
So the answer there is no. I will be home packing, so the answer here is no. So probably Dom Zook is the fourth person. He's shaking his head as well. So that's coming up later tonight. So instead of your normal crit juice action, you can check in with the Dungeon in the Box offering and see, take a little peek under the covers there and see what that's all about. Might interest you and your GMing style. What else is, so tomorrow night is a one-shot?
No, it's a 3-episode miniseries.
Oh, a 3-episode miniseries. That's right.
Teenagers from Outer Space.
Teenagers from Outer Space. And Talena's DMing, is that correct? No.
Mac.
Oh, that's right. Mac Beauvais is DMing. Talena's playing along with...
Blythe. And that's all I remembered.
Hey, Dom, why don't you come on camera and help us fumble through the calendar?
No, this is great.
The great thing about having chat up is when you guys pull up the calendar, I don't get to see what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So it's Mac Beauvais is running it. It's Talene, Blythe, Meredith Placco, and Tracy.
Tracy King?
Tracy King are playing in that game, and that will be a 3-episode mini-series, just like Lords of Greyhaven.
No, that's a 4-episode miniseries.
Yeah.
I know.
It was
but
supposed to
it's a
be 5,
miniseries.
but Jordan screwed up.
Yes,
Jordan. Embarrassing. So that's going to round out the week for us. A reminder that today is the end of the month. New Patreon pledges are certainly welcome. If you'd like to back us, you can even back us at the $100 level. Is that what it is to get your very own GM online session with part of our crew here? At $10 and up, you get early access to our Experience Pointers podcast that Megan, Jordan, and Gaurav so diligently host. There's a number of other goodies as well, so you can check that out. Thanks to everyone who put tips in the tip jar. You can also, if you're doing holiday shopping, you can Amazon Smile us, I guess is the way. No, it's an affiliate link. Yeah, you can use our affiliate link for all of your purchases, and we'll get a portion of that. So however you want to know, if you want to chip some revenue in, or if you just want to share the word on social media, we certainly appreciate that. If you like what we do here, tell your friends that you like us, and maybe they'll like us too. We'll grow our audience. We've been putting up some good numbers, and we hope to continue that trend. So this weekend, not on the Saving Throw channel, but here in the Saving Throw studio, there'll be a special, the 3 lost episodes of Future Girl. There'll be a reading with Amy Dallin, is that right? Mm-hmm. And friends hosting that. Is that on Amy's Twitch channel? Yeah. So Enthusi Amy, you can check that out this weekend as well. We will be back here next week. Well, I will be back here on next Tuesday, assuming that I'm moving next Friday. I'm moving.
I will
away
also
from
be
tomorrow.
back here next Tuesday, but at a different time.
Yeah. So you can check in on Eric's game next Tuesday night and see that. Monday night is I forgot the schedule. Hey, guess what? If you do !calendar, you can see all of this stuff. Clearly, like, my battery is drained at this point. The 2-hour stream has beat me up. And no amount of Diet Coke can save us from the hellscape before us. So I want to thank everybody who had chimed in with their suggestions. I thought we took what was a solid first session, and now we have a really great place to go forward with session 2, and really, I think, going to be a compelling arc for the rest of that game. As always, I appreciate your insight and questions about the Iron Keep Chronicles. Your input helps me run a better game. I don't know if Eric, he doesn't necessarily get to see how much influence chat actually has in the crafting and shaping where the story is going. So you all know how good you are. So thanks for the bits, RJ Canuck. Thank you to our mods, Fuckwad, and everyone else who spends their time to keep our channel safe, friendly, and accessible. Until next time, let's dungeon!